So, Adam, thank you for joining us again on the People and Projects podcast.
Well, don't thank me yet, but I'm thrilled to be back.
Okay, so I personally enjoyed it, Adam, when you do lightning rounds with some interviewers lately. So I thought it'd be fun to do a version of that. So elaborate or as much or as little as you'd like, but let's jump in. What's an idea from Hidden Potential that you're glad is getting a lot of attention and one that you think maybe isn't talked about enough?
Oh, I love that question. I'm glad that there's been a lot of dialogue about the value of asking for advice rather than feedback.
Yeah.
And how getting people to talk about what you can do better tomorrow actually gets you more actionable suggestions than having them critique what you did yesterday.
That's good. Right.
I'm a fan. Not getting enough attention, I would say probably the idea of scaffolding would be one. And the other might be, I was expecting more discussion of collective intelligence and how we can make a group more than the sum of its parts.
That's good. That's good. All right. So next one, a book is a project, man. You're a project manager. So what's a lesson you've learned about keeping a project like this on track?
Accountability partners are always helpful.
Yeah.
I know when somebody's waiting on a draft from me, even if it's not my editor, I feel a little bit of extra motivation.
Right.
But I think a lot of people do that.
Yeah.
I think maybe less obvious for most people is I actually find it enormously helpful to do a draft and put it away for 3 weeks. And then when I come back to it, I have a fresh perspective. And my first reaction is usually, who wrote this crap? But I also find the self-distancing helpful because, in addition to being able to see my work a little bit more clearly, I'm in a position to detach my identity from it. And I don't find the criticism as tricky to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, it's good for any project for sure. I love that. I'd have to think there's a lot of stuff that drives you crazy about what people think about organizational psychology is true. So what's something that people may think is true, whether it's behavioral science or organizational psychology, but the evidence is just really weak or just flat out not supported?
I think I have to go with the value of experience in hiring and interviews here.
Yeah.
I cannot tell you, I'm sure you've seen this throughout your career as well. So many leaders and managers still use years of experience as a proxy for potential.
Right.
I'm like, there's a meta-analysis, a study of studies, Chad Van Ideken and colleagues, which shows that it essentially predicts nothing. There are exceptions. It's helpful to have a pilot with a little experience flying a plane, maybe a surgeon and a kindergarten teacher as well. But in the vast majority of jobs, the number of years of experience you have has no bearing on your future performance. What we should really care about is not what you know how to do today. It's your motivation and ability to learn tomorrow.
Yeah. And that lines up with your book too. So how about this? Success brings increasing demands. What's one way that you strive to make sure that you don't say yes to things that you should be saying no to? Because I think you do a really good job of this, but what's one thing you do?
I'm still trying to get better at it. One of my favorite heuristics is I don't add unless I've subtracted. So steady state is I'm overcommitted. And that means I can't say yes to something unless I've said multiple no's and or removed something from my list.
Yeah, that's good. So you've been on some big stages. I mean, just Oprah, at least being published in the last week. So what's one thing you do to calm your nerves before a big presentation?
I am still trying to figure that one out. I think with Oprah, she's so affirming. I think it's the most relaxed I've ever been for a recorded interview.
You look like it.
Thank you. I fooled you. No, I really felt when I sat down like she was trying to bring out my hidden potential, and it's hard to be on edge when the person who's leading the interview is trying to bring out the best in you. When that doesn't happen, or for me the hardest thing is live TV because it's so short. And it feels like it's high stakes in terms of one mistake can kind of ruin a segment. It's not like being on stage for an hour where, or doing a podcast where you can edit or you're going to end up doing something well. Yeah. For that, I've actually found it helpful just to chat a little bit with the host or with the producer, and I guess for me that's a warm up. It's really hard to sit down and just kind of start talking out of nowhere. And so as much as I generally hate small talk, I've actually found that small talk prepares me for big talk.
Yeah, that's actually a good way of thinking about it. Can you think of a piece of feedback? Like, I think I just learned that someone told you early you can't write. I just learned that recently. Somebody told you that, and so you nicely overcame that. I think that's fair to say. But can you think of something that you didn't like at the time, but you needed to hear it?
Yeah. I think the useful message in that demoralizing criticism of my writing skills was that I was underappreciating the importance of structure. And this, frankly, Andy, this is still something I struggle with as a writer, that my my judges and coaches who read early drafts always push me on, because once I've figured out the evidence I want to cover and I've found a story that illustrates it well, and I've captured the key ideas, like, it's not that fun or interesting. Like, the dots are already connected in my head. I don't want to spend weeks massaging the transitions and the signposting. And I did not want to hear that my writing was difficult for people to follow because I see the connections in my head. And I needed to hear that the reader would not make them naturally.
Yeah, that's interesting. So the massaging part can be part of your bore out in some ways that you talk about. In some ways, I mean,
it literally bores me out of my mind.
Yeah. What's something you recently asked an AI chatbot about?
I actually recently asked an AI chatbot to rewrite a paragraph of mine in the voice of Maya Angelou.
What'd you think?
I don't think Maya Angelou would have been pleased. But it was a good exercise for me, because I tend to be abstract and cognitive, and I'm always working to make my writing. I don't want to lose those elements, but I want to add in the concrete and emotional, and that's I definitely got some of that back from Claude and from ChatGPT.
Yeah. When was the last time you performed magic in front of a group?
It was before COVID until this week, when I got asked by an audience to do a trick and ended up doing 2 card tricks.
Nice. You and I first talked back in 2010, and when you joined us on episode 31, but can you think of anything you miss in some ways about being Adam Grant in 2010 and not miss?
Oh, what do I miss about 2010 me? I think it was easier to pleasantly surprise people. I would walk into the classroom, students had no expectations. That was a little less pressure, but I also think it's a tremendous privilege to be in a position where people do have high expectations of me, and I certainly feel motivated to try to reach and exceed them. I think the thing I don't miss is the insecurity of feeling like, especially because a lot of people think of the social sciences as lacking rigor, to feel like I had to prove that I was interested in evidence and that I did rigorous work. And I think there's much more respect for the field now, and that's helped a lot.
Yeah, for sure. I think I might have actually interviewed Hal Hirschfeld because of a recommendation you had. You might have had him on your books, but regardless, he has that thought experiment about you walk through a gate and you have the opportunity to run into the 20 years from now version of Adam. Would you, and what would you want to ask that 20 year from now Adam, if that was an option?
I don't want to learn from my future self. I want to learn from people I know right now.
Absolutely.
That seems like a navel-gazing exercise in some ways. But Hal does great research, and so if he's recommending it, there's got to be good reason for it. What would I ask my future self right now? I think I would ask, what are the projects I should abandon? Would be one question. And then I think the other question I would probably ask is, what's something I should be rethinking now that I'm going to be rethinking in 5 or 10 years?
Yeah. I think that's kind of where you went with it. But here's how I just want to end this, Adam. I hope to be cheering you on for another 20 years. I mean, the impact you've already had so far in your young career in many ways, through your writing and teaching has been so good. So for those listening, I highly recommend you get a copy of Adam's new book, Hidden Potential. I put links to the book and Adam's website in the show notes for this cast. So Adam, I know it's a busy week for launch, and so thank you so much for joining us again on the People.
No,
Projects
thank you.
podcast.
But I'm really thrilled to be here, Andy. But I'm not letting you off the hook so easily and so
Okay,
quickly.
all right.
So I'm gonna take your job for a second here.
Do it. Absolutely.
I'm curious. What's an unanswered question you have about unlocking hidden potential?
I haven't read the book yet, but the imperfectionist idea, I think, is one that I want to ruminate and I want to iterate. And part of getting older is you realize some of that you don't have to do. But I think that idea of being okay with being an imperfectionist or separating identity from my work, I think are things that I don't know if you ever really get past it, but I feel like that's something I'm resonating so far with your message.
Oh, I'm glad. I'm still in recovery on that one.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I'll tell you the thing that I've probably found most helpful that did not get the attention it deserved in the book is the task of just sitting down and saying, okay, my current self has unreasonable expectations, but my past self didn't. So, what would Adam of 2010 think of this work? And if that version of me would have been pleased with it, I don't always like it, but I dislike it less.
Yeah. Isn't it cool how just reframing sometimes in little ways like that can make a big difference? Yeah.
So tell me also, the other thing I was really curious to hear your perspective on is how do I say this? You are a pioneer of podcasting. You were doing this back when people did not know what a podcast was. And I think you were one of the first people to realize that we didn't need to leave insight about leadership and teamwork and collaboration locked up in books. And I'm curious about how your view of effective podcasting has evolved over the last decade and a half.
It's a great question because there's so much diversity in how to do it. Some people are just talking heads and some people are more interview and some people, you're like in their living room. So what I like is you have the opportunity to do all of that stuff. It can be all of it. But honestly, my favorite thing about this whole thing, Adam, is I just like having conversations. I like just learning from people. And I think when I get feedback of I like the podcast, it's because they know I'm learning with them. And I think if we look at it as, there's entertainment and good for those who do entertainment, but I want to like have a conversation, and we just don't get to have conversations with people like you. We don't get to have conversations. And so my favorite part is making thought leaders accessible with questions that maybe aren't the typical sort of questions, And I think you do a good job on that with work life as well, of drawing out unique angles on things, which I love listening to.
Well, thank you. You've really done, I think, a masterful job of distilling people's insights and also taking their ideas in new directions. And I think the other thing that you probably underappreciate about you is your energy is just infectious. I feel like every time I listen to you, I come away feeling a little bit more hopeful and a little bit more inspired than I was coming in. And I think part of that is, just the joy you take in learning. But part of that is I think you're the best kind of optimist. You don't ever deny the challenges, but you always believe there's a way to overcome them.
Yeah, don't we aspire for that? And Adam, I really appreciate you saying that. I think and everyone listening to us also, I think, has this sense of sponge, right? That we want, because otherwise we'd be listening to something else, right? But that idea, and you do a good job of helping us be sponges. So Adam, it really is a privilege to be able to spend time with you, and I look forward to future conversations.
Same. Privilege is all mine. And let me also just say thank you, because you did a brilliant interview with one of my mentors, Richard Hackman, that we're going to be playing some audio from on Work Life come early 2024. And it was so gracious of you to agree to let us use the clip, and we'll do a People and Projects shout out. So People and Projects is coming to Work Life.
All right. I'm so excited because at that time, I didn't know who Richard really was. Like, I was so clueless to how brilliant this guy is. And he was quite generous in the interview. He was personable, and he was a mentor for you, right?
Yeah, he actually taught my first organizational psychology class. So he's the reason I went into this field, and he was one of my thesis advisors. And I'll tell you what, you got some things out of him in that interview that he never disclosed.
Oh, that's cool.
Talking about how bad he was at teamwork and where he struggled in particular. It's like, do you know how many times I asked him that question and how many ways I tried to pull it out? And he was a vault.
He was very honest, I thought. I thought that was really, really good. Yeah, yeah. All right, sir. Well, hey, thanks again, Adam. I appreciate it. Take care.
Thank you, Andy. Great seeing you.
See ya.